Respect and appreciation are two of the most powerful forces that hold a relationship together, especially when it comes to a good man. A good man doesn't walk around demanding praise or asking to be worshipped. He doesn't need you to throw a parade every time he does something right. But what he does need, what every man needs at his core, is to feel seen, to feel like who he is and what he does actually matters to the woman he loves. Respect is the language of love for a man, and appreciation is the fuel that keeps him showing up every day. Without those two, even the strongest, most well-intentioned man will eventually become distant, disconnected, or worse, gone. See, men may not always express it the way women do, but they are deeply emotional beings, especially a good man who has committed himself to being honest, loyal, supportive, and strong. He puts in effort you may not always notice. He sacrifices things you may never even hear about. He holds stress in silence, carries responsibilities with pride, and tries to be the rock everyone leans on. When that kind of man gets up every day and does the right thing, he doesn't do it for applause. But when no one notices, when he hears nothing but complaints or silence, that wears on his spirit. And slowly but surely, that good man starts to shrink in the relationship. You might not even realize it's happening. You might think he's just being distant, moody, or distracted. But what's actually happening is he's being starved of what keeps him emotionally present, respect for who he is and appreciation for what he brings to the table. When a man feels respected, it ignites his drive. It affirms his identity. He feels safe, valued, and proud to provide, lead, and love. But if all he gets is correction, nagging, or passive-aggressive silence, he begins to feel inadequate. And a good man won't keep showing up in a space that makes him feel like he's not enough. A lot of women confuse love with guidance. They think, I'm only pointing it out because I care. I'm only correcting him because I want him to do better. That may come from a good place, but if all a man hears is what he's not doing right, he's going to internalize that as failure. And let me tell you something. Men do not stay where they feel like failures. Not the real ones, not the ones trying. If everything he does is met with critique or indifference, he'll feel like no matter how hard he works, it's never enough. And once a man feels like he's constantly losing, he'll stop playing the game altogether. Appreciation doesn't mean praising every small gesture. It means noticing. It means acknowledging. It means saying, hey, I see you. If he's working long hours, thank him. If he fixed something without being asked, let him know you appreciate it. If he's emotionally present, supporting you, or protecting your peace, acknowledge it. You don't have to overdo it, but don't underdo it either. That man isn't obligated to pour into you day after day without being poured into. A good man wants to feel that his efforts aren't just expected. They're valued, and respect goes even deeper than that. Respect is how you speak to him. It's the tone you use when you're frustrated. It's what you say about him to others. It's whether you listen to his opinion or dismiss it. It's how you handle disagreements. You can disagree without dishonoring him. You can correct without cutting him down. Men are far more sensitive to tone and energy than people think. If you raise your voice, roll your eyes, or throw out sarcastic jabs, he may not always argue back, but he will feel it. And when that happens enough times, he'll stop talking, stop sharing, and eventually stop caring. What many don't realize is that when you respect a man, it doesn't make you weak. It doesn't mean you're beneath him. It means you honor the role he plays in your life. It means you understand that love without respect is just tolerance, and no man wants to be tolerated. A man wants to be honored for who he is, not just loved for what he does, because the moment he starts feeling like nothing he does is good enough for you, the love starts to fade, not because he stopped loving you, but because he stopped feeling like he mattered. So no, respect and appreciation are not optional in a relationship. Not if you want to keep a good man. They are daily choices, small things with big impact. They keep a man rooted. They water his purpose. They build trust, intimacy, and loyalty in ways that physical attraction never could. When a good man feels respected and appreciated, he'll go to war for you. But when he doesn't, he'll silently retreat. And you might not realize what you lost until it's too late. Men crave emotional safety more than they'll ever admit out loud. Society has trained men to be tough, unshakable, and stoic. From the time they're boys, they're told not to cry, not to complain, and not to show weakness. So, most men grow up learning to keep everything inside. They build walls, they wear masks, and even when they find someone they love, someone they want to open up to, they're still cautious, because deep down they're afraid that their vulnerability will be used against them. That's why emotional safety is so important to a man. It's not just about peace and quiet. It's about knowing that when he opens up, when he lets his guard down, he won't be punished, mocked, or misunderstood. A good man doesn't mind responsibility. He doesn't run from hard work. He'll show up, sacrifice, and protect what he loves. But what he won't do for long is stay in a space that feels emotionally unsafe. If he's always walking on eggshells, bracing for the next explosion, or constantly being pulled into unnecessary drama, he will emotionally check out. Not because he doesn't care, but because he has to protect his peace. And peace, for a man who deals with the weight of the world outside, becomes sacred inside the home. If the place that's supposed to be his refuge turns into his battlefield, he'll start to avoid it. He'll start to avoid you. Drama, chaos, and emotional games may keep the adrenaline going in a toxic relationship, but they drain the life out of a healthy man. He doesn't want to argue just for the sake of it. He doesn't want to fight to prove his loyalty or constantly be interrogated about where he's been, what he's doing, and who he's texting. He wants calm. He wants communication that builds, not communication that destroys. He wants to feel like he's on the same team as his woman, not like he's constantly being tested or attacked. A man can handle a disagreement, but if every disagreement turns into a full-blown war, he'll slowly start choosing silence over connection. Emotional safety for a man means being able to speak freely without being shut down, ridiculed, or dismissed. It means being able to show his emotions, his fears, doubts, and even his tears, without being labeled weak. It means not being judged when he's struggling. It means being able to say, "I'm tired," or "I'm not okay," and instead of being told to toughen up or man up, he hears, "I'm here for you." That kind of environment allows a man to breathe. It allows him to trust, and when a man trusts you with his emotions, he gives you a part of him the world never gets to see. But once he realizes his vulnerability is being thrown back in his face or used to manipulate him, that door closes, and it's hard to open again. Some women confuse a man's silence with disinterest, when in reality, that silence is a defense mechanism. It's his way of not escalating things. It's his way of avoiding more conflict. But silence is not peace, it's withdrawal. When a man starts to emotionally withdraw, it's a sign that he no longer feels safe in the space you've created together. He's not necessarily mad, he's just tired of explaining, tired of proving. Tired of arguing and tired of not being heard. The truth is, many men won't tell you they need emotional safety because they've never been taught how to ask for it, but you'll see it in their actions. The man who used to talk to you every day now gives you one-word answers. The man who used to light up around you now looks drained. The man who once shared his dreams now keeps them to himself. That's not just him being distant. That's him retreating into emotional survival mode. If a man feels like he has to fight at work, fight in the streets, and then come home and fight with the person he loves, eventually he's going to find somewhere else to rest, and that somewhere else may not be another woman, it might just be isolation. Retreat, silence, numbness, because sometimes peace is more attractive than passion, and calm is more comforting than chaos. So no, men are not emotionally bulletproof. They're just better at hiding the scars. But when they find someone who gives them emotional safety, who listens without judging, responds without attacking, and loves without drama, they don't let go of that easily. That's the woman he feels safe around. That's the woman he trusts with his truth, and that's the woman he wants to build with, because behind the strength, behind the pride, and behind the armor, all he really wants is peace. Comparison is one of the quickest and most damaging things you can introduce into a relationship, especially when it comes to a man's confidence. A man may not always express his emotions in obvious ways, but the moment you compare him to another man, whether it's your ex, your friend's husband, a celebrity, or even your father, you plant a seed of inadequacy in his mind. That seed grows quietly, but it grows strong. Every time he hears that someone else is doing more, providing more, saying more, showing up more, he begins to wonder if who he is will ever be enough for you. And once a man begins questioning his worth in the eyes of the woman he loves, the foundation of the relationship starts to crack. Most good men are already hard on themselves. They're constantly measuring their progress, their success, their ability to lead and provide. The world already puts pressure on them to be more, earn more, look a certain way, act a certain way, and carry themselves with strength at all times. So when the one place he looks to for comfort, his relationship, starts to echo those same comparisons, it doesn't feel like love. It feels like judgment, and a man who feels judged at home will never be fully present. He'll start to shrink emotionally. He may go quiet. He may withdraw. Or he may stop trying altogether because he's come to believe that no matter what he does, it won't measure up. A man doesn't need you to lie to him or stroke his ego. He needs authenticity, but there's a difference between being honest and being hurtful. If your compliments to him always come with a side of comparison, like "I wish you were more like him," or "Why can't you do what he does?" what you're really saying is that someone else's version of manhood is better than his. You're saying, without saying it, that he's not enough. And once a man feels like he's constantly in competition with someone else for your approval, he will start detaching, not because he doesn't love you, but because he no longer feels emotionally safe in the space between you. Even subtle comparisons cut deep. You might think you're just making an innocent comment like, "My friend's boyfriend surprises her with flowers every week," or "My ex used to plan more thoughtful dates." But what he hears is, "You're not doing enough. You're not loving me the way I want to be loved." And instead of feeling encouraged to improve, he feels like he's already lost the game. Men don't want to compete in their own relationships. They want to be celebrated for who they are and supported in who they're becoming. But if you keep holding up someone else's standard in front of him, he'll stop striving for greatness because he knows he's chasing a moving target he'll never reach. The thing about comparison is it doesn't just kill his confidence. It kills intimacy. When a man feels compared, he stops opening up. He stops being vulnerable. Why? Because vulnerability requires trust, and comparison breaks that trust. If he tells you about his dreams, and you respond by highlighting how someone else is already doing it better, he'll stop sharing his dreams. If he makes an effort, and it's immediately overshadowed by how another man would have done it differently, he'll stop making the effort. Comparison tells a man, "Your best is not good enough." And no matter how strong he is, those words echo in his heart long after the conversation is over. Men are driven by purpose, pride, and passion. They want to feel like they are winning in your life, like they are the man you choose every day, not just the man you settled for. If you keep comparing him to others, you're robbing him of the very confidence that helps him lead, love, and provide. And once that confidence is gone, so is the version of him that once believed he could be everything you needed. It doesn't take grand gestures to build a man's confidence. It takes words of affirmation, acknowledgement of effort, and space to grow without fear of being measured against someone else. A man can handle correction. He can handle constructive feedback. But what he can't thrive in is a relationship where he's constantly being reminded of how he doesn't measure up to the guy next door, your favorite actor, or the man you used to date. He wants to be your man, not someone else's shadow. When you speak life into him instead of comparison, when you uplift instead of evaluate, you create an environment where he can grow into the best version of himself, not because he's competing, but because he knows he's loved as he is. Love is not just a feeling, it's an action. It's not enough to say you love someone if your behavior constantly makes them question it. For a relationship to thrive, love must be expressed openly, consistently, and sincerely. When love is withheld, whether through silence, emotional distance, rejection, or passive, aggressive behavior, it becomes less of a bond and more of a battleground. Especially in the case of a good man who is loyal, consistent, and emotionally invested. Withholding love doesn't teach him a lesson. It teaches him that vulnerability is dangerous and emotional connection is conditional. A good man values peace, affection, and emotional closeness. He may not always say it, but he feels deeply. When you withhold your love from him as a response to conflict, as a form of punishment, or as a tactic to regain power, you're not correcting a problem. You're creating a bigger one. You are training him to associate your love with instability. He begins to wonder when he will get it, if he even deserves it, or if it's going to be taken away the next time he makes a mistake. This creates emotional insecurity. It doesn't make him step up. It doesn't make him try harder. What it does is make him retreat, go quiet, and start suppressing his own needs just to avoid more rejection. People often assume that withholding love is a form of boundaries, but it's not. Boundaries are about protecting your own peace. Withholding love is about manipulating someone else's behavior. When a man feels like love is a reward he has to constantly earn, and that one misstep could cost him your warmth, your attention, your respect, he stops being real with you. He starts pretending. He gives you what you want just to avoid punishment. But that's not a relationship built on love, it's survival. Love has to be expressed in a way that your partner understands. That could mean physical touch, words of affirmation, acts of service, or quality time. Whatever his love language is, when you intentionally pull that away to control him or make a point, you're not only hurting him, you're hurting the connection between you. A good man notices when you stop holding his hand. He notices when your voice gets colder, when you stop saying "I love you," or when your energy shifts from warm to distant. And the more often that happens, the more emotionally unsafe he feels. Sometimes people think that withholding love will motivate their partner to change, to reflect, or to apologize. But a good man doesn't operate off emotional manipulation. He operates off respect and clarity. If you're hurt, talk to him. If you're frustrated, express it. If you're feeling distant, let him in, but don't weaponize love. Don't make affection something he has to beg for or chase down. That makes him feel like a stranger in a relationship he thought was safe. There's a big difference between taking space to calm down and using distance as a punishment. One is mature communication. The other is emotional warfare. When you withhold love in subtle ways, ignoring his texts, being cold in conversation, pulling away physically. It creates emotional confusion. He doesn't know whether you're upset, finished, or just trying to hurt him back. That uncertainty chips away at his trust, and trust is the foundation of everything. A good man wants to feel like the love you have for him is strong enough to survive the tough moments. He wants to believe that even when things aren't perfect, your love remains steady. That doesn't mean tolerating disrespect or staying silent about your needs. It means not using love like a switch you turn on and off depending on your mood. When love becomes conditional, the relationship becomes transactional. It turns into you do this, then I'll give you that, which is not sustainable or sincere. There's nothing wrong with taking a moment to breathe during a disagreement. But there's something deeply harmful about giving someone the silent treatment for days, shutting them out emotionally, or using affection like a prize. That doesn't bring two people closer. It pushes them apart. It builds resentment, and resentment, even in a loving relationship, is a slow poison. Love that is felt but not shown fades over time. You can't expect someone to keep pouring into a connection that constantly leaves them empty. A man will give his all, again and again, when he feels secure in your love. But if he feels like he's being starved emotionally, if he feels like love is withheld every time he messes up, eventually he'll stop trying. Not because he's weak, but because even strong men get tired of chasing affection they used to receive freely. Love must be shown in the way you speak to him, the way you touch him, the way you encourage him, and the way you respond when things get tough. When love is consistent and genuine, it builds a bond that's unshakable. But when it's withheld, even the strongest man starts to feel like he's not worthy of it. And that's how good men start to slip away. A good man needs to feel needed, not in a desperate, clingy kind of way, but in a way that makes him feel like he matters, like his presence in your life brings value, like who he is and what he brings, emotionally, mentally, physically, makes a real difference. At his core, a man wants to feel like he is wanted, not just for what he can provide, but for who he is. When a man feels needed, it gives him purpose. It inspires him to keep showing up. It gives him the drive to be better, to do more, and to stand stronger in the relationship. But when a man feels like he's not needed, when he starts to feel like he's just there, just another option or placeholder, he begins to disconnect. He doesn't just shut down, he starts to question his place in your life. Many women today are strong, independent, and self-sufficient, and that's a beautiful thing. But independence doesn't mean shutting a man out. Being capable doesn't mean you stop making room for someone else to contribute. A good man isn't intimidated by your strength. He admires it, but he still wants to feel like you want his help, his advice, his presence, and his protection. When you always act like you've got it all figured out, like you don't need him for anything, not even emotional support, you unintentionally send the message that his existence in your world is optional. And a good man won't fight to stay in a space where he feels unnecessary. Men are wired to protect, to fix, to lead, to support. It's not about ego, it's about design. When he sees you hurting, he wants to be the one to help you heal. When he sees you struggling, he wants to lighten the load. When he sees you win, he wants to know he played some part in it. But if every time he offers something, advice, support, perspective, you shut him down or respond with "I've got it," "I don't need help," or "I'll handle it," he starts feeling like an outsider in your life. He doesn't need to be your savior, but he wants to be your partner. He wants to feel like his presence enhances your life, not that you're tolerating him while doing everything on your own. What many people miss is that emotional contribution matters just as much as financial or physical. If you never ask for his thoughts, if you never turn to him when you're stressed, if you never let him comfort you when you're overwhelmed, you're denying him one of the deepest forms of connection. Allowing someone to be there for you is an act of intimacy. Vulnerability is not weakness, it's trust, and when you trust a man enough to need him, not dependently, but sincerely, it fills something inside him that nothing else can. Needing a man doesn't mean you're not whole on your own. It means you recognize that love is a partnership. It's a give and take, a balance, and sometimes the strongest women are the ones who can look a man in the eye and say, "I could do this alone, but I don't want to. I want you by my side." That's the kind of truth that speaks to a man's soul. It tells him he's chosen, not just tolerated. It tells him that his efforts are seen, his presence is felt, and his love is reciprocated. There's a silent pressure that good men carry every day. They might not voice it, but they feel it. The pressure to provide, to perform, to protect. When the woman they love makes them feel needed, it eases that pressure. It turns the relationship into a safe place. A place where he's not just valued for what he does, but for who he is. The opposite of that, being made to feel replaceable or unnecessary, doesn't just hurt his pride, it chips away at his desire to stay emotionally invested. A man doesn't need to be praised constantly, but he needs to be acknowledged. He doesn't need to be begged for help, but he needs to be welcomed into your world. He doesn't need to be needed because you're weak, but because you're willing to share the journey. That mutual need builds something strong. It creates a rhythm where both partners pour into each other, lean on each other, and grow with each other. When a man feels needed, he's energized. He feels trusted. He feels like he's building something that actually matters. But when he feels like his role in your life is optional or replaceable, he starts to emotionally withdraw, not to punish you, but to protect himself. Because a man will only keep pouring into a cup that he believes still wants to be filled. There's a fine line between loving someone for who they are and trying to shape them into who you want them to be. Too many people step into relationships with a hidden agenda, thinking they can fix or upgrade their partner to match an ideal they've created in their mind. But a good man doesn't want to be molded. He wants to be supported. There's a difference between helping someone grow and trying to control their evolution. A man will grow with a woman who believes in him, but he will resist a woman who constantly tries to remake him. The minute he feels like he's not enough as he is, the minute he senses that he's a project instead of a partner, something inside him starts to break down. Men, especially good men, carry a certain pride in being authentic. They want to be accepted as they are, even while they're trying to become better. That doesn't mean they're unwilling to change. In fact, the right woman can bring out sides of a man he didn't even know he had. She can challenge him, inspire him, push him toward purpose. But that only happens when the motivation is rooted in love, not dissatisfaction. When a man feels safe, valued, and respected, he naturally wants to improve. He wants to rise to the occasion because he feels empowered, not because he's being torn down and rebuilt. Trying to mold a man usually starts subtly. You begin by criticizing small habits, making passive remarks, comparing him to someone else's success or personality. Maybe you think it's harmless, just encouraging him to dress better, talk differently, think more like you, but over time, those small signals add up. What you may think is just helping feels like rejection to him. He hears you're not enough. He begins to question his instincts, his decisions, and even his identity. He starts losing the confidence that drew you to him in the first place. The irony is, the very traits women often fall in love with, his independence, his confidence, his style of thinking, are the ones they later try to adjust. When you try to change how he talks, how he handles emotions, or how he moves through life, you risk dimming his natural light. A man doesn't grow under pressure. He grows in partnership. He grows when he feels safe to be himself, even with flaws. He grows when his woman doesn't shame him for where he's lacking, but speaks life into who he can become. Support looks like encouragement, not control. It sounds like "I believe in you," not "you should be more like this." A good man knows he isn't perfect. He knows he's going to mess up, fall short, and make poor choices at times. What he hopes is that the person he's with will stand beside him during those times, not as a judge, but as an ally. Someone who doesn't pretend his flaws don't exist, but who doesn't use those flaws as a weapon either. Support means creating space for growth, not forcing it. It means offering wisdom, not dominance, guidance, not guilt. A man wants a partner who recognizes his potential and helps him unlock it, not someone who treats him like a rough draft that needs rewriting. The difference is subtle but powerful. When a woman supports a man's growth, she speaks to the king inside him. She sees the best in him, even when he's still trying to see it in himself. Her belief becomes a mirror that shows him what he's capable of. But when she tries to mold him, all he sees is criticism, expectations, and pressure to become someone he's not sure he even wants to be. No one wants to feel like they have to earn love by changing into someone else. A good man wants to grow, but on his terms, with his values, his timing, and his vision. He wants a partner who walks beside him, not one who pulls him in every direction. If he senses that your love is conditional, based on his performance, his appearance, or how much he conforms to your ideals, he'll start pulling back emotionally, not because he doesn't care, but because he's starting to lose himself in the process. When a man is supported, he flourishes. He tries harder, he dreams bigger, and he becomes more consistent. Not because he's afraid of losing you, but because he feels inspired by you. He feels like he's safe to grow, safe to evolve, and safe to become the man he's meant to be. That kind of growth is sustainable. That kind of support builds bonds that last. But the moment he feels like he's being molded into someone else's vision, the authenticity fades, and with it, the foundation of the relationship begins to erode. Trust is the foundation of every strong relationship, but it's often misunderstood. Many people believe trust is only something that has to be earned over time, that it's a one-way street where one partner has to prove themselves while the other holds back, measuring their every move. But real trust doesn't work that way. Yes, it absolutely has to be earned through consistency, honesty, loyalty, and actions that match words. But once it's earned, it also has to be given. You can't build a relationship with someone you're constantly doubting, questioning, or second-guessing. A good man will do everything he can to show you that he's dependable, but if you don't allow yourself to trust him, the relationship will never feel safe for either of you. A good man wants to be trusted. It's not just about freedom, it's about emotional connection. When you trust him, you're telling him that you believe in his intentions, that you see the good in him, that you're not trying to catch him doing something wrong. That trust empowers him. It gives him the space to lead, to love freely, to be open and vulnerable with you. But when every move he makes is scrutinized, when every delay in texting back turns into suspicion, when every interaction becomes a question of loyalty, he begins to feel like he's always on trial. And no matter how strong a man is, no one wants to be in a relationship where they constantly feel guilty for things they haven't done. It's true that some people have been hurt in the past. They've been lied to, cheated on, manipulated. That kind of pain runs deep, and it's understandable to be cautious. But the truth is, You can't bring those old wounds into something new and expect it to grow. A good man is not responsible for what someone else did to you. He's not there to clean up someone else's mess. If you want a healthy relationship, you have to do the work to heal. You can't project your fears onto him and then blame him for making you feel unsafe. Trust means giving someone the opportunity to show who they are, not assuming they're going to repeat someone else's behavior. When trust is mutual, both people feel safe. They can communicate openly. They can make mistakes and learn from them. They can disagree without fearing abandonment. But when trust is one-sided, when one person is always being tested while the other refuses to be vulnerable, the relationship becomes unbalanced. That imbalance creates resentment. The man feels like he's always trying to prove something, while also not being trusted enough to be himself. And eventually, even the most patient man will grow tired of jumping through hoops just to earn a love that still doubts him. A good man will understand your hesitation at first. He'll be patient, he'll be consistent, and he'll do his best to earn your trust. But there comes a point where it's no longer about him, it's about you. Are you willing to trust him back? Are you willing to give him the benefit of the doubt, to let go of control, to stop checking phones, reading into texts, or interrogating every move? Because if you can't, then the issue is no longer about earning trust. It's about your own fear of vulnerability. Giving trust doesn't mean being naive. It doesn't mean ignoring red flags or staying in a situation that doesn't feel right. It means observing someone's actions, seeing their consistency, and then choosing to believe in them. It's a choice you make every day to believe that the person you're with has your best interest at heart. And when they show that with their actions, your ability to trust them is not a risk, it's a reflection of the bond you're building. Trust is not just about fidelity either. It's about emotional reliability. Can you trust him to listen when you speak? Can you trust him to show up when it matters? Can you trust him with your heart, your fears, your dreams? That kind of trust goes deeper than loyalty. It speaks to emotional integrity. When a man feels like he's trusted in those ways, he rises to the occasion. He wants to protect that trust because he knows how valuable it is. But if he feels like no matter what he does, it'll never be enough to earn your full faith, eventually he'll stop trying. Not because he doesn't care, but because living under constant suspicion isn't love, it's pressure. A good man who loves you doesn't want to betray your trust, but he also doesn't want to be in a relationship where he's constantly working to earn something that's never given in return. Trust must start somewhere. It starts with a choice, and once that trust is earned, it must be honored with belief, openness, and grace. Because no matter how loyal or loving someone is, no one can thrive in a space where they're never truly trusted.